Bringing a typical rhythm game experience to the table, Muse Dash comes out on Steam on June 20th, 2019 for a price of $2.99, with a discount of 60 cents in the first week. It also comes out on the Nintendo Switch for $29.99, selling for $26.99 in the first week. Now, you may be wondering why the price is so different between the platforms. Well, that's because there's a DLC pack that's optional for the Steam version, which costs $24.99, being on sale for $19.99 for the first week. That DLC pack is built into the Nintendo Switch version. As for the number of songs available in each, the base game seems to have around 50 songs unlocked with the version that I'm playing on the PC, with the DLC packs having about 72 songs based on a count, but don't quote me on that. The PR says that there are 70 base songs and doesn't really mention how many DLC versions there are, but that there are DLC versions. It should be noted that the game has been out for a year now on the mobile platform for $149 for the base version, with payable DLC there. But before I begin this review, this key was obtained from evolve.pr for the purposes of review. That won't change my opinion of the game in the end, but you should know that because of FTC guidelines, as well as the whole morals thing, you know? And I know that dollar thing was confusing to begin with, but let's get into the actual game, shall we? Let's start with the core of the game, the rhythm gameplay. Muse Dash is simple and requires only 2 buttons, which default to F and J on the standard keyboard. One hits the enemies on the ground level, while the other hits the enemies in the air. Your typical hit patterns are here: simple beats to complete upon a press, held beats that require a start and end point, and smash the button repeatedly regardless of the rhythm beats. There is one difference from other games in the genre with the ghost beat, which shows up but fades before it gets into the hittable area, and allows you to hit it, but also doesn't punish you for not hitting it on your combo chain. Speaking of the combo chain, it gets interrupted if you miss a beat, but that doesn't actually do you damage. Yes, you do have an HP bar here, and you take damage when an enemy touches you on the same plane that you are on right now. And yes, this does give you some opportunities to sacrifice your combo to not take damage, but all in all, you won't ever use it. Yes, you will fail a stage if you go to HP of 0, but the amount of times where that matters, where one hit is the difference, is almost less than 0. More on that in a bit. Muse Dash does nothing different in the genre, and at the base level, despite the playing field and the way it comes at you feeling a little different than other games, the same rules you see in those other rhythm games apply, for the most part anyway. The game has 3 difficulties, having the easy and normal ones unlocked to begin with, but unlocking the harder difficulties after beating the song with a high enough rank, or at least that's what I think unlocks it. You do get achievements and trophies for certain feats being reached as well, and of course, there are online leaderboards to see how you do against others. I, of course, have shown that I'm a master rhythm player with my #1 ranking here, despite the fact that this was only players with review copies, and I think there was only 10 people who had played it at that point. Don't mind that, though. Rhythm games at their core, however, are some of the more simpler to judge despite them being a lot of fun due to the mechanics and gameplay being straightforward. And starting with that is the accuracy of your hits coinciding with the press of the keyboard. For the most part, the accuracy of the hits in Muse Dash was on point, but once in a while, I did question it, especially in the perfect versus great area. That may be due to it being a little bit differently timing-wise that I'm visually used to in the genre, and especially with this reticule-like thing here. But when looking at the time of my hits and slowing things down, I really never had too many problems with it. The biggest question I had was the harder difficulties and those sections where I had to rapidly go back and forth between the keys. I do feel like my mashing of keys repeatedly ended up working a little too often than it should have on certain song sections. You don't get punished for hitting a key on a side where there's no enemy, and so that may be playing a part into it as well. But there is a small delay if there's nothing to hit, even if you're on the same plane as the next thing that you need to hit. So you can't just use a turbo button and start smacking things over and over again. But in terms of accuracy, you also expect the song to match well with the beats and rhythms that are being put down. And again, Muse Dash does well here. This was really prevalent on the normal difficulty, where the more standout notes always got an enemy to hit, and it felt like it really went along with the song almost verbatim. Easy did it as well, but it was a little bit, easier. But on difficult, I will admit there were a few song sections that it felt like it added extra key presses that really didn't match the song very well. It tried to make a song that was maybe a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for, slow or not necessarily needing those button presses, a little bit more difficult, even though it seemed to not match. Again, this was only a few cases out of the many songs that the game has, and frankly, but in the accuracy portion, one thing does come to mind here. Difficulty. Difficulty is a bit trickier in terms of Muse Dash. The game really wants you to succeed in most cases, as the amount of health that your main character has and the damage you take on failures isn't enough in the early goings to give me a reasonable problem at all. Granted, I'm a veteran of the genre, so newer players may have more problems getting used to rhythms and the type of skills needed. But for myself, I finally failed my first mission on a difficult song towards the last of the unlocks that I had. For some, that may turn you off to the game, that you want to be pushed to be like those Dance Dance Revolution masters, or something like Hatsune Miku. But what should be noted is that for players who want challenge, it's the actual accuracy percentage that should be used, even if it isn't what veterans of the genre may expect. Many rhythm games will measure accuracy by sheer hit or miss, regardless of the version of the hit. Remember, you can get greats, get excellents, get bads, and in most games, a good and excellent, they're gonna count. In those other rhythm games, you can then see how your score compares to other scores to see how well you did for hitting excellence instead of goods, or there will be separate stats for you to look at that. This is not the case for Muse Dash. The accuracy percentage seems to take into account anything that's not an excellent and adjust the percentage based on that, costing you a little bit of that score. Even if you get a full combo in this game, for example, which is defined as no bads or misses, you can have 95% accuracy, 90% accuracy, or even 85% if you ended up getting a bunch of greats and not excellent. While this is against the grain, I actually like this idea, and frankly, it does accurately portray how well you did on the song, well, at least for the most part. There's also a fever mode, which is when you build up combo and use it for a special boost to score and a unique effect depending on the character you're using, but more of that in a bit. This is typical in rhythm games, but it's not too important compared to other games in the genre, at least what I see here for other than score purposes. So if you're expecting it to save you a lot, you've got another thing coming. With that said, of all the traditional rhythm games that I have played, this may be the most accessible for those who haven't experienced typical rhythm games before. It could be partly due to the fact that the game is reasonably forgiving, and you'll succeed even when you don't score-wise. But it's also helped with little helpers in the characters that you unlock, such as the elfin helpers and the characters themselves. For example, each character has its own stats, specifically an HP stat and a skill. Those skills range from getting 50% more experience per song, which is absolutely useful for leveling and actually getting more characters, or adding 5% accuracy at the end of the stage. In addition, Elfins can do small abilities, such as having your fever time last 2 more seconds, or turning 3 misses into greats. Now on these, the ones that you unlock early, they felt like they were useful in very, very slight cases, but really weren't game altering. Things like converting 3 misses into bads is great on the surface, but doesn't really affect the overall standings or is going to save you when things are really bad. Some of the later ones, however, like 5% more per perfect, are necessary for score chasers, and depending on what you unlock, you have to play games over and over again even if you scored perfect on everything on the run. So that is a tiny bit annoying. To summarize, the gameplay is simple. It's more of what you'd expect out of the genre, but not repetitive enough so that it gets boring or feeling like just a derivative of every other game out there. The thing is that it does a good job with variety, it does do a good job with the songs, and overall, the input, control lag, everything along that line feels right for this type of gameplay. Along with the rhythm gameplay, you'd expect a flashy presentation that doesn't distract from the gameplay, but does well in complementing the beats and making something fun to look at. The chibi cute style here is eye-appealing, focusing on primary colors of blue and pink for the different play lanes, but changing up the notes with different characters to fight off that stagnation other rhythm games can have. I'm still unsure if the characters that you're fighting mean anything different in terms of the rhythm compared to each other, but it's nice to see a rhythm game with a little bit different note presentation without it distracting from the base gameplay. The thing is that you could get cutesy and, change colors or do all these weird things, but you do want some consistency for notes that you're going to hit repeatedly, and the game hits the balance well here. The color and line work is clean, with characters easily seen from the foreground and the background, and the different backgrounds are simple, but have a layer of detail that really complements the foreground without being distracting. While there's only about 4 to 5 backgrounds in the game, aka I would like a little bit more, the themes of the characters and monsters stand out well, such as flying jazz hats or speaker bats. In fact, it's cute as all hell, and I do love the character costumes that the game gives you, such as a robotic teddy bear being ridden, or for some reason a character in a present. Merry Christmas, obviously. I also love the character designs personally, despite them using several of the same base characters in different outfits. They scream fun, without care for ideas of, does this make any sense, or will people get angry with this one? Don't get me wrong, certain games those question marks make a lot of sense to ask whether or not it fits within the story, but in this game, it's all about rhythm and fun, and well, it delivers in almost every aspect here. Visuals aside, however, let's be completely honest. You want to know about the music. I mean, it's only central to the game at its core. The game has a selection of music ranging from J-pop, trance, and Vocaloid style music to more traditional pop and even something I would classify as soft rock, at least what I think is soft rock. The oddity about talking about the music for me is that even with the base set of tracks here, I started to feel there was some repetition happening with certain beats and areas of songs, but having each song still feel unique and have its own sound to it in the overall picture. Maybe it's the fact that they are all foreign songs, but if you ask me to easily identify any one song from another title-wise, I'd fail miserably here. I do want to emphasize the variety within the genres here. For example, the Vocaloid songs. Yes, a lot of them had high-pitched voices and what you would expect out of something like Hatsune Miku. But the songs and the actual voices were different enough from each other that they had their own flavor to it, and quite honestly, they all worked in their own. It also did a lot of instrument work that brought out kawaii factors out of it, such as violins starting the piece into a jazz infusion section, or a xylophone ringing out notes at the start of a piece, or even a bass guitar belting out a fantastic solo. The thing is that the common theme with these songs, even the high energy songs, was soothing. There wasn't anything rough about the music, even the hard rock portions. It was all things that made me feel relaxed and ready to take on the challenge of the gameplay. With that said, I will note that unlike other rhythm games that I play, there weren't many songs here, if any, that I absolutely hated to play. There were standouts, of course, like Lights of Muse, Pancake is Love, and Galaxy Striker, but all of them had some element I enjoyed, even the ones I would put on my lower tiers. Now, I've taken a selection of music here that I think best represents the music experience as a whole to get an idea of what you're going to experience. Yes, there are a total of 6 songs that I will highlight without any commentary, but considering this is a music game, well, this is what you should be listening for. Take a listen. There is a tiny bit of voice work in the pseudo title screens and at the end of stages, and while it is good work, there's not much to go on here despite what I think are quality performances. I'm sort of surprised it's here at all, especially for a mobile game, but I guess I shouldn't complain. Take a listen and see what you think.
雪合戦に負けないぜ。特別なプレゼントだ。とにかく私の顔を立てて受け取れ。いちごとチョコレートのケーキ、どっちがいいかな。キャンディー大陸、スローちゃん行きたい。メイド服なんて誰が考えたんでしょうか。紳士的な対応。
Overall, the presentation, despite coming from a mobile game, yeah, it works here even on 1080p or higher monitors. And the fact is that you will enjoy it, especially compared to other games in the genre. It is a little bit more colorful in terms of its character work, and especially with the notes in question. A good job here. As for the technical elements of the game, there were no performance issues here, and the one bug that I did see was fixed before the release. I mean, if you're wanting a frame rate breakdown here, there's no frame rate lock. And considering that most of the tests I did had the game running in the gameplay at 1000 FPS, yes, not 100, 1000, that's based on Steam's overlay, you're probably good. I mean, you probably weren't expecting problems given the game's type of gameplay and the fact that it was a mobile game at first, but still, it's nice to see and understand that, yeah, you're not going to have a problem here. What did surprise me, however, was the options. I mean, I admit, I wasn't expecting much out of a game with mobile roots, and the thing is, it goes up to 4K with a bunch of resolution options. Having borderless, windowed, and full screen options was great to see. Of course, you'd like more graphics options than just low and high for the effects, but granted, a lot of the artwork and a lot of the fidelity here, you don't necessarily need that. The game performs well, as I mentioned before. But the fact that you could adjust the brightness of the background to see the notes clearly, that was awesome to see for those who need that option available to them for accessibility reasons. Fantastic even. Controller and keyboard control sets come in groups, with you being able to bind up to 4 keys for the 2-button inputs on the keyboard. And again, a good choice by the developers here. And while you can't bind the options for the controller, with the default options available here, I feel like most people will find a set that does work for them. Languages are English and, well, I think it's Korean, Mandarin, and Japanese, but lo and behold, I can't read what these options are, and I'm not going to try. Finally, for those with TVs for monitors and are concerned about accuracy problems, you do have an option for the offset here to fine-tune your performance. And game, thank you for that. Overall, I'm satisfied with the technical elements of the game, and while yes, I would like little things here and there, they're not enough to make me say that this was a negative experience in the technical element. Far from it, in fact. Finally, let's finish up with the game's story. There's no story. It's a rhythm game that was on mobile devices at first. It's got little character moments for which character you select and then saying things to you, but that's about all the story you're going to get. If you need story in your game, look elsewhere. In the end, Muse Dash provides the base of what players should expect out of the genre, but with enough small twists and unique elements to make the game feel like its own thing and not just another rhythm game. Sure, the game was a mobile game to begin with, and that comes with its own connotations, but don't let that scare you away from it if you like this sort of genre, or heck, if you want to try the genre as a whole. It's a solid experience that has a good playlist, and while it may not blow you away, you will get your money's worth, especially for the PC base version. I will say to do your homework on the DLC parts if you go to buy them, but regardless, the game scores an 83 out of 100 for me, making it a solid buy unless you're hurting for cash. But that does not include my enhancer system, which takes more subjective elements in games and puts them in a scoreable form. If you fall into one or more of the following categories strongly, add or subtract that score to the main score. If the first digit of your score changes, then refer to this chart to see where the game lies on the buyability scale for you. Quick status update while we're at it. Coming up next on the channel, video-wise, is a review of Fruit Bat Factory's The Princess, The Stray Cat, and Matters of the Heart, and expect that Monday. It's a positive experience for me, and I'll put that out there, but I need the extra week, in particular the weekend, to really dig into the comedy aspects of the review, so I'm sorry I didn't have that up for launch. I'm also at stage 7 of 8 of Zanki Zero as well, so expect that review in the next 2 to 3 weeks. In the meanwhile, I am developing a more streamlined review system that's not like anything that you've seen on this channel before for games that I cover on streams or games that I cover that are a little bit older. And I will be revealing that in the next few months in terms of that format. In the meanwhile, I will be streaming 2 to 3 times a week for games coming out that week, or a game I continue to play, like Yakuza 0. This is Dragnix signing out, and as always, keep on gaming.